hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. I'm Mario Sikora, along with my co-host, TJ Dawe. TJ, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling just fine. Don't let the raspy voice fool you. How are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Excited to talk about this movie. Let's see. We're going to talk about the transmitting type 8 subtype. We're on a journey through the 27 subtypes this season. TJ, why don't you tell us what movie we're talking about today and give us a quick summary of it?
Yeah, this is The Dark Knight Rises from the year 2012. It's the third movie in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight, which is the one with the Joker played by Heath Ledger, and Bruce Wayne has stopped being Batman, but he gets drawn back into being Batman when Gotham is threatened and eventually taken over by a mercenary called Bane, who's tremendously beefy and wears a contraption on his face that soothes chronic pain and also gives him a particularly interesting echoing voice. Bane beats up Batman, breaks his back, unmasks him, and takes him halfway around the world and puts him in an underground prison somewhere in Asia, it's never quite specified, so that he can watch Bane destroy Gotham City by TV in his cell before he dies. Bane then leads a takeover of Gotham City, which lasts for months. And in the meantime, Bruce Wayne recovers, escapes, makes his way back to the U.S., infiltrates the sieged Gotham City, and leads the fight against Bane. And in the end, Bane is killed, and Gotham is saved, and Bruce Wayne retires and lives happily ever after with Catwoman.
Theatricality and deception. Powerful agents to the uninitiated. But we are initiated, aren't we, Bruce? Members of the League of Shadows. And you betrayed us.
Yes, you were excommunicated by a gang of psychopaths.
I am the League of Shadows. I'm here to fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny. Leave us.
No, you stay here. I'm in charge.
Do you feel in charge?
You know, I remember seeing this movie in the theaters and enjoyed it, although I did think it's probably the weakest of the trilogy. But I will say, and it struck me again watching it this time, the opening sequence is really, really good. I mean, it's kind of Mission Impossible level stuff, right? So,
and Christopher Nolan has stated that that's his favorite scene maybe he's ever filmed.
Oh, really?
He's definitely said it's his favorite from the Batman trilogy, and it's real. It's not CGI.
Yes.
It really was airplane stunt work par excellence.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular, and I think it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. So, I guess as we step into this, TJ, since we're talking about the transmitting type 8, we should talk a little bit about what it means to be transmitting, how that's different from, how some other people might talk about this, and then what it means to be an 8. In fact, let me start off with the 8 because that's easy, and we've already talked about it in previous podcasts in this series. The type 8 is what we call striving to feel powerful, right? So that is somebody who gets their sense of everything being okay by me being in charge, me being in control, me being strong. The more adaptive someone is being who's an 8, the less blatant they feel the need for the power to be, the more kind of in the background it can be. And when they're under stress or when they're psychologically unhealthy, you see it coming out pretty dramatically, right? It's a very obvious characteristic. The transmitting 8 is probably the most aggressive of all the 27 subtypes, right? It's the most forceful, larger than life sort of character. It's kind of the stereotype I think people have in their minds when they think of type 8. Okay. But, a different character from the preserving and navigating 8. Okay. Anything on type 8 before we talk about transmitting?
No, I mean, we'll revisit the 8-ness of this movie. But I think that covers it very well.
Okay, good.
And you, as an 8, I'm not surprised.
So the transmitting instinctual bias, other people would refer to this as a sexual instinct or a one-to-one. And I think this movie really kind of encapsulates why I don't think that's really the right way to think about this, right? That I think that what's happening here is broader. There is certainly an element of, one-to-one relationships or sexual or romantic relationships in this instinctual bias. But this bias is really all about expression of something, right? It's about having things inside of me that need to come out. Now, that could be our genes, right? But it could also be our ideas about things, our ideals, the things that we create in the world. So transmitters in all three, in all of the types tend to be more assertive, more outgoing, more, aggressive in a way. They talk more. And again, it's this, I've got stuff that needs to come out. Okay, so transmitters are usually, kind of high energy people. They talk a lot. They're expressive. They're conscious of how they look and how they come across and what image they present to the world, even more so than the navigating and preserving subtypes. Okay, so one of the other things that I see about transmitters is that they tend to be the people who they want to have an impact on the world. Right? And they want to put their stamp on it and leave some sort of legacy. So these are the people that are often the world changers, right? The people that want to reshape the world in some way. And a lot of the descriptions of different, Enneagram types that I see, a lot of times people think that it's the social subtype that wants to change the world and have a big impact on it. In reality, it's more likely that it's going to be the transmitting instinctual bias that has that. Now, you're a transmitter yourself, so why don't you tell us your perspective on transmitting?
I think it's going to vary from person to person because not every transmitter is the same, just like how not every 8 is the same and not every, say, transmitting 8 is the same. But absolutely, wanting to make an impact, wanting to make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs once said, wanting everybody to know I was here. And it's not even just transmitters quite often want to reshape the world. They want to reshape the world in their own image. And in the case of, say, a transmitting 1, that might be done under the name of an ideal. Like it's less likely that a transmitting 1 would say it's all about me, but it still kind of is. It's this ideal that is filtered through me. And with a transmitting 8, it's a lot more blatant. It is all about me because I am mighty, I am almighty, and ye shall kneel before me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think we see this in Bane, right? I mean, Bane, there's not a lot of romance in Bane, right? There's not a lot of one-to-one relationship. In fact, there's really nothing particularly sexual about this, right? I mean, there is a plot twist at the end, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it now. One of the other characters that's transmitting in this is the Catwoman character. I mean, she's very much transmitting. She's very sexual. She's very seductive. Bane is not, right? I mean, he is just trying to exert his will. Although we do find that there's this kind of tender relationship with the character Miranda, that is revealed at the end. So one might read into that there's kind of a one-to-one intimacy there, or kind of a deep connection. But again, it's not sexual, which is important to say. What else did you see about Bane that you saw as transmitting, TJ?
He loves to talk. And I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn and saying that might be universal amongst transmitters. I mean, the desire to make an impact, whether it's on the person I'm talking to or on the world, doesn't always come out through verbal expression, but it probably comes out in some equivalent of it, of like, pay attention to me. And when a transmitter has the microphone, you're going to have a hard time taking it away from them. Yeah. They love expressing themselves and they take relish in doing it. And one of the courses that I took when I was getting my theater degree was on theater history, and it was specifically on melodrama. And something I noticed when I rewatched this movie was that Bane sometimes overpronounces certain words. Like he's just like tasting how delicious they are to say these things, which is exactly something that would happen in melodrama. I remember a professor of mine saying in melodrama, the word blood, when we say it, it consists of one syllable. In melodrama, at least 3. There was this,
Yeah. On that, one of the things that struck me rewatching it is actually how little Bane is actually in the movie, right? I mean, he's the character that you remember very often, after you watch the movie. But when you look at it, he's in a small, minutes wise, he's in a pretty small amount. And most of that time he is pontificating in some way, right? And there's a great story about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to do a little sideways here, who is a great example of a transmitting 3. And when he was governor of California, somebody said, your opponents say that you just like to pontificate, right? And what do you feel about that? And Schwarzenegger says, pontificate. Like the pontiff, like the Pope. Yeah, I like that. That's great. I'm like the Pope, And so when Bane is speaking, you're absolutely right. I would say, with him at least, not only do they love to speak, but he loves to hear himself speak, right? And I'd be curious who came up with that sort of mannered way of speaking that Bane has, whether that was a Tom Hardy thing or whether it was a Chris Nolan thing. What was the process of saying, let's have this guy talk like this, right? Because that's not a Tom Hardy voice, necessarily, right? So, go ahead.
He modeled his voice after this very specific guy, and you can find footage of this guy on YouTube. He was a bare-knuckle boxer in Britain, in the Romany people, so they were, those people have been fictionalized in the movie Snatch. And so they live in caravans. They don't have fixed addresses. They kind of live in between the law. And Brad Pitt's character is a bare knuckle boxer. So they're kind of part of this underground network of we don't pay taxes. We don't have fixed addresses. And in the case of this guy whose name was something like Gorman, something or other, it's escaping my memory. Gotcha. But you can see interviews of him. So it's a very particular accent, and I think he chose it well in that you can't place it. So he's not in no way a stereotypical or not stereotypical Russian or a Spaniard or Englishman or what have you. He seems to come from nowhere.
Yes.
Kind of like how the name Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men is ethnically ambiguous, as is his accent and appearance. It's almost like this person just kind of stepped directly into earth from hell. You can't place me. You can't reduce me to any kind of cultural background.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, a number of references to the character as kind of a myth, right? There's no real understanding of who he is and where he came from and all of that. So he just sort of appears and, like you said, kind of out of the middle of nowhere.
And as you said, he's not in that many scenes, but there's about as many scenes as he's in as there are scenes of people talking about him when he's not there.
Yes.
His legend is out there. Yes. And people who have never encountered him are terrified of him, even if they only know fragments. And that would please any transmitter in terms of my reputation precedes me like that. And very much as you said, as I was rewatching the movie, a note that I came up with a bunch of times is this is like something out of mythology. Yeah. And for the past few years, I've been reading a number of novels that are set in mythic Greece. And some of them are based on the Trojan War, which archaeologists say probably happened. It's questionable whether there actually was a person called Achilles. Right. But it's possible there was. And it's possible that whatever he did is somewhat similar to what's described in the Iliad. In any case, that's a name that is still spoken of, including right at this moment, thousands of years after this man lived, whether it's supernatural or not. And that is very much the framework of Bane and of superhero comics altogether. Yeah. They're not realistic. They're fantastical. Even like in this one, nobody has superpowers, but it's operatic. It's on a grand scale.
Yeah, there's this thing about transmitters, and particularly transmitting 8s, that they just, they walk into the room and it's like 3 people walked into the room, right? They just, they just have this disproportionate impact on their environment, it seems. There's a great scene. There's a movie. This clip came to my mind the other day, and I was watching it. A movie called Absence of Malice with Paul Newman and Sally Field, 1981. It's a pretty old movie. And towards the end, Wilford Brimley comes in, right? He plays, I think, a prosecutor or something. I can't remember, a judge maybe. And he just comes in and completely takes over this room, right? I mean, little Wilford Brimley, kind of who it just seems like the old guy from Cocoon or something, but he just embodies this transmitting 8 persona and just dominates everything, and it's fascinating to watch that he just, it's just by force of personality that he sort of takes over. And that's what happens with Bane every time he's in the room, right? I mean, there is no doubt at any moment who is in charge when Bane is around. Right?
And who's the most interesting person on the screen.
Yes, that's
he
true.
Makes Batman seem kind of tame and dull.
Yes. And, there's a largeness to him as well. Like you pointed out already, Tom Hardy really beefed up to play that role. I mean, he's almost unrecognizable if because he's wearing a mask most of the time too.
And he's got a shaved head, and he's got this accent.
Right. And and I think Hardy is probably a transmitting 8 as well, right? He plays them a lot in, his roles. Mobland is a great example. But he just has this presence and this force that comes out.
And he's not as tall as they make him look. I looked this up. He's 5'8", whereas they've used
Tom Hardy's 5'8", really?
Yeah. So they use camera angles, they use force perspectives, they use all kinds of tricks to make him seem like he's 6'6" or something like that,
right?
And about as wide as he is tall. And it's so, and because he's using an accent that is his own, and because we can't see his face for 99.9% of his performance, he didn't get typecast as that.
Right. So there are some other things too that kind of jump out as transmitting. First of all, let's see the way he dressed. I mean, besides the mask and just other things, but there's that scene where he's at the football stadium and he's wearing that incredible sheepskin jacket, right?
Peacoat.
That just it's got the white all around the head, kind of serving as a frame. I mean, it just says try not to look at me, right? And there's the way he stands, right? And he doesn't just stand, but he'll always put his hands into his, flak jacket or his collars and kind of stand there. And there's something about that position that makes you stand upright more, right? And it puts this emphasis on the front of your body and it points to the face, right? So so it's just this great way of standing in a way that defies people to not notice you because you just can't, right? So there's just this tendency to, everything about him is designed to get noticed. Even the motorcycle helmet he's wearing, when they do the attack on the stock exchange, is red, right? Now that helps to make the character stand out too, but you just know that guy's going to wear a red helmet. He's not going to wear a black helmet or something like that, right?
And his face mask, which is there for medical reasons, doesn't make him look frail. Like, imagine if it was just a simple breath mask. Right. That would imply I need intervention to survive, which is exactly what it does mean. But instead, it just makes him look like this mythical character.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like I'm dressing for flair like a comic villain typically would.
Right.
Of like, I've come up with this persona and I'm modeling myself on this animal and, ooh, you'd better be afraid of me. And it's like, this is just what I have. But now he looks like he's some figure, again, from mythology or from science fiction.
Yeah, the mask even has... it has the feeling of being this mouth with these steely teeth, right? It looks like this menacing growl, but it's not obvious, right? I mean, he's not playing the role of, some wannabe tough guy who puts, a pirate face on, on a bandana or something. No, it's just, this is just, just menacing, right? Without even me seeming to try. Right. Although it probably is, deliberate and intentional at the same time.
And we don't see, like, he doesn't wear a tank. Like, where's
Right.
where's the painkiller coming from? It's all contained right in front of his face.
Yeah, this is true. We can't dig too deep into the plot here. So,
And that's the thing with any superhero story, whether it's a movie or a TV show or a comic book, it's like you'd better just park those concerns at the door if you want to enjoy this.
yes, this is where suspension of disbelief is quite important.
And where I think a lot of Batman stories in particular go wrong because he doesn't have superpowers, so they try to make it plausible, and
Right.
it ain't
Yeah.
on any level. That doesn't mean it's
Right.
not enjoyable. That doesn't
Right.
mean it can't thrill you. It's just don't pretend this could ever happen.
Right. Right. A couple of other things that it seemed kind of transmitting about the character to me. He has, what he's trying to do is just kind of remake society, right? I mean, it's just not like I'm going to steal some money or something, but no, I am going to turn over the social order of Gotham. Okay. And now we find out that there's a deeper reason behind that, that he's actually working at the direction of Miranda, who's a little girl that he saved, early on. And I'll let you explain that whole, that whole connection there. But it's, again, and that's when we talk about transmitters having a worldview that they want to put out there. This is an example of it, right? No, I'm not here. Look, I'm not some small time guy who's just trying to steal some money. I'm not Hans Gruber, right? Who's, pretending to be a revolutionary when I really just want the bucks. No, I am trying to overturn society here. I have this big vision of how things should be. Kind of like Thanos, right? Another transmitting 8 sort of character is that, no, I'm going to make it my way. Because number one, it's the way I want it. And number two, it's the way it should be. But it's really just because it's the way I want it.
And I want you to know that it's me that did it.
Yes. Yes.
And,
yes.
And the twist that you mentioned, so very late in the movie, we find out Bane's not actually in charge.
Yeah.
What he's doing is he's fulfilling the wishes of Ra's al Ghul, who was Liam Neeson in the movie Batman Begins, who was Bruce Wayne's mentor, who Wayne eventually turns against because he wants to bring about the destruction of Gotham City because he's part of an ancient society called the League of Shadows that just decide when empires rise and fall. And Bruce Wayne kills him at the end of, or allows him to die anyway, at the end of Batman Begins. So then this third movie, the character of Miranda Tate, who's played by a French actress whose name's escaping me at the moment, she is a businesswoman and industrialist in Gotham City, but eventually reveals that her true identity is Talia. So she's Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and that Bane had rescued her from the prison that she was born in, which is the underground prison. So Bane is working to fulfill her wishes, which are her father's wishes. All of this is a long way of saying he's not actually in charge. Unusual for a transmitting 8, and yet he doesn't mind making it seem like it's all about him. He keeps his purpose secret. He doesn't necessarily have to because he's really winning, but everybody knows it's all about him rather than quietly being in service of the person who's actually in charge, of whose vision he's helping complete.
Yeah, and for me, that was an interesting twist, right? Because again, to your point, you would think, oh, he's the transmitting 8, he's the one in charge, gets the final say on things. But that's not always the case with 8s, right? I mean, they can be in service of something bigger. They can be in service of people that they respect and that they admire. And what I found as I watched it this time is that as that reveal came out and you saw Bane protecting her as a child, and the look on his face when, she was escaping and he was, fighting the whole rest of the prison, I had sympathy for Bane, right? There was this, he became kind of a compassionate character in a way. So thoughts on that?
Well, that fits in with what we've said in our episodes about the navigating and preserving 8s as well, is 8s don't lead with this, but there's a tenderness in there. And you don't always see it in the portrayal of an 8. And fair enough, especially an 8 villain, a transmitting 8 villain in a superhero movie wouldn't necessarily, a one-dimensional portrait would be just fine. Yeah. But having that element of it is like, oh, that's nice, because it seems like the polar opposite of what an 8, much less a transmitting 8, is all about, and it's not in the slightest. It's just they don't lead with that. So, like, you have to get pretty close to Bane to find out that story about him. Like, I doubt even the people directly under him have any idea about any of that. And that's
Right.
only told to Bruce Wayne because Talia, Miranda, believes he's dying at that moment. She has literally stabbed him in the back. So it's like, and she's doing a real transmitting thing too, which is, I'm going to talk to you a lot as you're dying. I'm going to tell you exactly who's killing you and why.
But, it's funny because there's the joke, and I just rewatched Austin Powers recently, and there's the joke about how the Bond villains always have to belabor everything, right? And, instead of just, and the Seth Green character is just, or Scott, I think his name is in the movie, just kill him, man. Just take a gun and shoot him, and he's like, no, it's got to be elaborate, sharks with laser beams and, all this stuff. And she even says in there something about revenge being better when it's slow, right? That that part of the torture is to stretch it out and make him watch and twist the knife a little bit and all of that. And of course it comes back to haunt her, instead, like as always does with these wordy transmitting bad guys who just can't shut up and do the thing,
Which works well in terms of plot because
absolutely,
if you killed Batman, then okay, I guess the movie's done.
Right.
But absolutely fits in with transmitters is I want you to know who it was, and I'm going to have my say, and I'm going to savor the experience of saying it.
Yes. So another take on transmitting is in the Anne Hathaway character of Catwoman, basically. I forget the name of the character in the movie.
Selena Kyle, and they never use the name Catwoman. They refer to her as a cat burglar. That's as close as they get.
Yeah. And very seductive, very sexual, very, again, talkative, right? When she dresses very revealingly. I don't know if I'd say she was a transmitting 8. I'm
3 would
not
be
sure
my guess.
Yeah, probably you're right. Probably more 3. And there is that dilemma of her, does she run away, at the end? And of course, her conscience gets her and she comes back to help save Batman and, all these things. But 8s typically wouldn't have that sort of struggle of conscience, Shane's going to show up, right? So 3 probably makes more sense, but absolutely, this is where we see a transmitter who is very, very sexual and just exudes that, aspect of the transmitting bias.
In the scene where we first see her, she's done up as a maid. So she's part of the service staff at a fundraising event that's happening at Bruce Wayne's manor. And she slips in, she finds a way to finagle herself upstairs and ends up stealing something. And when Bruce Wayne catches her, she slips out the window like an acrobat.
Yes.
Seemingly with no plan, like there's no net below.
Yeah, with 6-inch heels too,
But that's the thing is she does it with flair.
Yeah.
She does this extraordinary thing like an Olympic gymnast. Like even for an audience of 1 or of 0, she can't help but astonish.
Yeah, like when she gets put into the jail towards the end of the movie, and there's that guy saying something rude, and he's got his hands sticking out, and she can't just grab his hands and twist them and yank them, but she has to grab them and do this cartwheel, right? So that,
and thus break his hands.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you didn't need the cartwheel for that,
But it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And what an impression it makes.
Right. That's again a very different version of transmitting. Anything else about transmitting that we see in Bane?
Yeah, well, just a thing about not in Bane, but something about transmitting. Christopher Nolan. You know that a movie is a Christopher Nolan movie, and he's one of the few directors in Hollywood that has final cut, and he makes his own movies exactly the way he wants, even when he's using a franchise character like Batman. It's like the Batman franchise was dead in the water when he came to it.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he got the creative freedom he wanted. But like ever since then, it's a big deal when he's directing. And you mentioned that opening airplane hijacking scene, which is like, he does this practically in every movie, is he throws down the gauntlet and says, look at what I just did.
Yeah.
Can anyone top that? You cannot.
Right.
And a lot of his movies are filmed at least partially in IMAX. And he will make a statement recommending people see it in IMAX. And I saw The Dark Knight Rises in IMAX when it came out, and it was incredible. And the sound had been tweaked so that Bane's voice seemed to come from all directions, including from the inside of your body. So, his voice is amplified and it's already strange, But then it had this otherworldly quality to that too, and that is absolutely by design.
Yeah, that's interesting. Speaking of Nolan, I recently rewatched Tenet, which kind of, was a victim of COVID, and there was a lot of controversy over it and when it was going to be released and all that sort of thing. It was kind of a mess, but actually a pretty good movie. I've watched it a few times, and each time I kind of like it more. But we have another character in the Kenneth Branagh bad guy who, is transmitting to the point where he knows he's going to die and he's going to take the whole world with him. Right? It's like, if I'm not here anymore, what need is there for, the rest of humanity? So I'm just going to kill everybody, or, end time because I've got cancer, sort of thing. Right. So, again, it is that look. It's that same look, particularly as the opening airplane scene. It just has that same sort of feel to it. So Tenet I really liked. I don't know, did you see that?
I have not seen it. Yeah. It's one of those movies that's notorious for being confusing in its ambiguity, which isn't why I haven't seen it. Like, I'm obviously going to see it, just haven't got around to it.
Well, there are quite a few of Nolan's movies that really screw with time, right? I mean, if you think of where he got onto the radar, it was with Memento, which was a movie happening backwards. And what's happening in Tenet is that it's running both backward and forward at the same time. It's really, when you do watch it, you're kind of like, what the, you're just, what on earth is happening here? But, when you watch it 3 or 4 times, it starts to make a lot of sense.
And then Inception is another one of his best known movies.
Exactly.
So again, you got a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream, and which part is real. And I think Nolan is a big old 5. And I think like a 5, he loves twisting with perception. He loves innovating. He loves taking things in a direction or further than anybody's ever gone before, and doing it his way while being almost entirely anonymous. His name is known, but he doesn't do cameos in his movies, much less play lead roles. Like, you never see him like on the red carpet or anything like that, or with a celebrity girlfriend.
I have no idea what he looks like. It just occurred to me. I couldn't pick him out of a crowd. And the other thing is, with his movies, there's kind of a sterility to them, right? They're impactful, but there's not any tenderness in them, right? I mean, there's not any, anything to go grasp onto emotionally. And most of the characters are sort of emotionally stunted in some way or another, right? Even Oppenheimer, very, very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Which, again, one of the shadows of type 5.
Yeah. Right.
Another transmitting thing in the movie in general is just the idea, which we touched on briefly, of legacy. So the very opening scene, Commissioner Gordon is giving a speech praising Harvey Dent, who died at the end of The Dark Knight. And Gordon and Batman conspired to obfuscate what he actually did and how he turned evil at the end in order to enact the Dent Act, which has increased prison population and denied parole to many people convicted of organized crime, that kind of thing. So Gordon considers telling the truth and shattering Dent's legacy, and eventually Bane finds his speech and reads that out. There's also the legacy of Batman himself. So he's been out of the scene for 8 years. Nobody's seen him. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows what happens to him. And then he reappears. And there's one scene where an older cop tells a younger cop something like, "Oh, you are in for an exciting night."
Yeah,
it's like the legend of him is like lives on in law enforcement, even though theoretically he's a horrific murderer and we should all be catching him. But there's still like, he's here. Oh my God, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah. And on the note of legacy, which I don't know if I caught this before, but we find out that the cop played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Robin.
Exactly.
Which I didn't catch. So it's kind of setting it up. It would have been interesting if they had gone somewhere with that. It would have been interesting to see, what Christopher Nolan did with that character as Robin. I don't know if it was enough for a movie or not, but I've always liked Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I think he's a very talented actor.
Oh, absolutely. And the final moment, literally the final moment of the movie, is him finding the Batcave and walking in, and then this column rising out of the water, which we know, it doesn't show it yet, contains Batman's outfit. The implication being that he will take on the mantle.
Yes.
So that's very much the legacy of Batman, which is
right.
talked about repeatedly. That's the advantage of nobody knowing who he actually is because it could be anybody.
Right.
And
Right.
allegedly it's to inspire people.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Dread Pirate Roberts, right? So
Exactly.
This one's done, and so when I go to the next one from The Princess Bride,
it's a title more than it is an actual individual person.
Yeah, like James Bond.
Yeah.
So, and Batman. What are we talking about in general, right? I mean, how many people have played Batman?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this character is a transmitting 8. Again, no doubt that this guy's an 8, right? He is in charge all the time. He is bold. He is, combative. He is, driven. He's, putting his will, on the world. Even the way he fights, it's interesting to watch the fights in this movie and how they're, fight scenes. I used to be a huge Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris fan, back in the, the 70s and 80s, and watching all these things, and to watch how fighting has evolved in movies is pretty amazing. So, for example, if you watch Matt Damon fighting in the first Bourne movie, it's a much more sophisticated style of fighting, much more realistic, but still incorporating, some of the, lesser known martial arts, like the Filipino martial arts and some jiu-jitsu stuff. And then you can take that on to John Wick, and the fight scenes in the John Wick movies very different. But there's an art, there's a sophistication to the fight scenes these days that wasn't always there. Not in this movie, man. Bane is just a brawler, man. He is just clubbing, and it's pure animal brute force when he fights, which again, it just has a very, very 8-ish kind of Cyclops sort of feel to it, to me, right?
And he's not afraid to just take a blow.
Yeah.
He just leaves himself open to Batman's punches as if to say, give me everything you got.
Yeah,
Is that all you got?
Me, little man. Yeah.
I'm not going to duck. I'm not going to block. I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
And when he's doing that, and that's in the initial fight scene, when he's doing that, Batman's yelling with each punch, which makes him seem less powerful than than Bane, who's just like, I will take it all. It doesn't even hurt me. And he's not actually saying that. He's saying that with his physical presence.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, he's also, of course, the ringleader of all these mercenaries. And they're not just mercenaries because they are devoted. They're more acolytes, right? I mean, there's that, in the plane scene in the beginning, there's the one that, the one mercenary that's about to leave. And he says, no, brother, you stay here because they're expecting one of us, a dead body of one of us in the plane. And the guy turns to him and says, but we've lit the fire, right? Bane says, yes, we have. So it's almost this cult, in a sense. Again, that, not every 8 is a cult leader, but more than likely most cult leaders are probably 8s, I would guess,
and
right?
Most cult leaders are transmitters, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, it's just that force of personality that wins people over to them, right? This ability to, to just draw people in.
This magnetism.
Yes.
Even if it's terrifying.
Yes. Yeah, which it is. I mean, because he does not suffer fools gladly, right? I mean, he, is not above killing his own people when they screw up, right? So,
and he does it without hesitation, and he does it without remorse.
Yeah.
He's just steady and brutal.
Yeah. All right. So anything else that struck out as particularly transmitting 8 for you?
We've already talked about how much he likes to talk, but I don't know that we can overemphasize that. So in that initial fight with Batman, he's speaking through a lot of it. And then in the final fight with Batman, he's speaking less, but he's even more brutal. And at one point, he punches into a cement column. So again, now
multiple times. Yes.
We're getting back to the mythological here of like, if somebody could break a cement column with their fist, he's not even wearing a glove, or if he is, it's not like an armored glove.
Right.
How could a human body absorb that?
Yeah. Yeah. And, and there are a couple of great, set preaching scenes. Like there's this scene on the courtroom steps, I think it is, where he is just, I mean, he's holding court. He's a twisted, bizarre version of MLK at the Washington Monument, or the Lincoln Memorial, it's a sermon, and
he's
he's
standing
just
on a car.
loving it. Yes. Yeah.
Like posing heroically.
Yes.
Do you accept this man's resignation? Like, again, the relish in it is like he's having the time of his life.
Yes. Yeah. And, again, it gets back to our point about eights loving mayhem, right? We talked about this in one of the earlier episodes, I think, with Russell Crowe and Gladiator, in that battle scene in the battle, where he bumps into one of his own men and turns around and he's about to stab him, realizes it's his own guy, and he just looks at him and smiles like, isn't this fun, and you could just tell that Bane is having the time of his life through all of this.
One complaint I have about the movie is Bane's death pretty fast.
Yeah, it's anticlimactic, isn't it? Right? It was just,
in general, a good villain, much less a good transmitting 8 villain, should get an appropriately large death. As opposed to the way he dies, which is just like, oh.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's it for Bane.
You just see him kind of like, flying out of the scene, right?
Yeah.
And, and then that's it. We
No
don't see
last
him anymore,
words,
right?
no death throes, no threat of vengeance from beyond the grave.
Which probably really would have irritated Bane, right? If I didn't even get my last words in, man, so. All right. So, how would this have looked with a preserving 8 or a navigating 8 in that role? Any thoughts?
Well, with a preserving 8, I would imagine there would have been 0 speeches. I think a preserving 8 who had been hired as a mercenary to lead an army of mercenaries would have been just more straightforward in like, let's get this done.
Right.
Let's kill who we need to, but nobody needs to know my name. And in fact, if people don't know my name, that helps me work as a mercenary and make more money, because I can go somewhere and not be arrested or have to sneak in.
Yeah. Methodical, under the radar, get it done. Here's my 37-point plan. Let's execute on these things one at a time.
If it was the Nick Offerman character from The Last of Us, I can picture him coming out of his castle, his lair.
Yes.
Coming in to do this and leaving before anybody knew who he was and going right back there.
Yeah. I had a client one time who was a preserving 8, and somebody said to me about him, he always has a list of 10 things that he's focused on, but he takes them one at a time. And if he's on number 2, don't talk to him about number 5, because he's focused on number 2, right? He's got the list, but he's not running ahead of things. So there is just this element of, don't bother me. I'm trying to get this done, and then we'll go on to the next thing. Yeah, it doesn't inspire, not necessarily one that's going to inspire the kind of followers that will go to their death for you.
Right? Nor the kind of character that would make a welcome entry into an operatic superhero epic like this.
Right.
And navigating 8, again, I would think they could probably successfully draw an army to themselves, but without making it all about themselves.
Yeah.
Again, probably a lot fewer speeches. And what happened, they would probably do what Bane purports to be doing in this, which is form alliances with dispossessed people.
Yeah.
Bane's just using them. When he takes over Gotham City, he gives these grandiose speeches about how we're returning it to you, the people. But it's completely lies. Like, there's no such thing. It's all about him at every moment.
Right. Yeah, there's even that part where they're talking about who has the control for the bomb. And, he had said that, a citizen had it and was roaming around out there somewhere. And somebody says, Bane's not going to give it to somebody else. Bane is, Bane, it's all about Bane for him. So.
Yeah. And the rhetoric that he's spouting to get people on his side is about legitimate grievances against the ruling class.
Yeah.
Like, I can imagine a version of that character who is doing that sincerely. I'm saying the city is corrupt because of wealthy elites and so on and so forth. So we do want to turn this into a socialist utopia. I can picture a navigating type wanting to do that more than a transmitting type.
Yeah. 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 Some are arguing that that's what just happened in New York. I don't know if I don't have an opinion on Mamdani necessarily, but that there is that same sort of sentiment in a way, but without all the violence. So
right, totally, with friendliness and a smile.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So anything else but the transmitting eight or, alternative realities of the character before we talk about other transmitting eights?
I think that about covers it.
So, so transmitting eights, it's funny because when I was thinking about this after watching the movie, I'm thinking, I could think of a few transmitting eights right off the top of my mind, and but then I was starting to struggle for a little bit, and then I went back and looked at the list of eights you created for the book that we're working on, and I thought, oh shoot, there's a whole lot of them. I mean, there's and so a couple that came to mind, and I want to, this is a character that is kind of stereotypically male. Right. When we think about it. So I wanted to first focus on female transmitting eights. And one we talked about in a previous season was Rizzo from Greece, right? The biker girl, the lead of, what was the name of the gang?
The Pink Ladies, I believe.
The Pink Ladies, yes. So Rizzo, Gina Gershon often plays a transmitting eight, and I think in the book you identified the movie Bound, which is an excellent movie, and very much a transmitting eight. Both Helen Hunt and Jean Smart in Hacks seem to be transmitting eights to me. There's an actress, a character actress, mostly in television, named Conchata Ferrell, who was in Mystic Pizza. She's a heavy-set, red-haired woman. Mystic Pizza, Two Men and a Baby. Not Two Men and a Baby. What's that? Two and a Half Men? Is that the name of it? Yeah, 2.5 Men is the name of the show with Charlie Sheen. She plays that. And she was actually, and this will just go to show you how old I am, she was in the TV series Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks and Peter Scolari back in, I don't know if that was the late 70s, early 80s, but that was, Tom Hanks's big break with that. So she was in that. But she always plays kind of a brassy, mouthy, in charge person, even though she's typically the maid or something like that, right? So she's, but she's a great example of a transmitting eight character as a woman. Any transmitting eights you want to mention? I've got a whole list here, so but go ahead.
My list is mostly men, but a couple I want to mention. One is the great blues singer Bessie Smith was the subject of a biopic on HBO about 10 years ago called Bessie, starring Queen Latifah, who I think is an eight in real life, playing a real eight blues singer. And her romantic interest in that is played by Michael K. Williams, who people know as Omar on The Wire. So that is one transmitter and another, and it's an excellent movie.
Yeah. Any other male transmitting eights?
Yeah, one of my favorite transmitting eights is Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
So his
and almost everything else.
Yeah. But particularly in Pulp Fiction, the fact that he has a habit of making this supposedly accurate Old Testament speech before he kills someone, which turns out not to be from the Old Testament, but still. Yeah. But he's got a speech. He's got a thing.
Yes.
He does it with flair. He is loud.
Yes.
He commands a room. He commands the screen, even though he's a supporting character in that. Great transmitting eight, including the mercy that he shows to the robbers at the end in the diner.
Yeah. Which even that comes with a speech,
right?
I mean, it's a great speech, but it's and the John Travolta characters in there just saying, "Jules, just kill him, just shoot him." All right. Who else?
We talked about Tyler Durden in the Fight Club. We have an episode on that. The character of Wolverine or Logan in the X-Men franchise, played by Hugh Jackman, is a great transmitting eight. Charles Foster Kane, Orson Welles in Citizen Kane. And Michael B. Jordan's villain character in Black Panther, and Logan Roy on Succession.
Yeah, one of the all-time greats, Logan. I think Brian Cox is probably a transmitting 8 in real life as well. But yeah, Logan Roy, absolutely.
Yeah, he is imprinting himself on the world as that character. He's the head of an empire.
Yes.
And what's his legacy going to be? Who will succeed him? Which of his children? I mean, those huge transmitting themes in Succession.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a couple that I'll add here. So one of the all-time great transmitting 8 roles is Denzel Washington in Training Day. Just pure. He's talking the whole time. He is lecturing. He's, even there's at the end, before he gets killed, he's got this line where he says, I am the police. King Kong's got nothing on me, right? I mean, it's just, I am bigger and badder than King Kong, right? So a great example there. Kilgore, the Robert Duvall character from Apocalypse Now, is just this great transmitting 8. And there was a scene in the Batman movie that made me think of that, because there's something that happens where there's an explosion and everybody else is sort of cowering and Bane is just standing there, right? Bane doesn't flinch, and it's reminiscent of Apocalypse Now, the beach scene where everybody's diving for cover and Kilgore is just standing there, and Martin Sheen's character says, you just know that this guy's not going to get so much as a scratch, right? So there's also the scene, you mentioned Snatch earlier, so the Brad Pitt character at the end when they all start shooting everybody at the end and the other two guys flinch. They do that freeze frame shot, but the Brad Pitt character is not flinching at all, right? So it's just this kind of, I am in control, I am here. Speaking of Snatch, Dennis Farina is in almost everything when he plays Ray Barboni or Ray Bones in Get Shorty, classic transmitting 8 character. Also in Snatch, plays Cousin Avi.
And
that's
Midnight
a transmitting
Run.
8. Midnight Run, just almost everything with him is a transmitting 8 character. Who else do I have here? One of my favorite movies is Miller's Crossing, and it has 2 great transmitting 8 characters in Albert Finney as the boss of the Irish mob, and John Polita as the boss of the Italian mob. And there's this great scene where Albert Finney's character says to John Polita's character, he says, Casper, you're only as big as I let you be, and don't you forget it, right? And again, it's just,
So
one of my
says the
favorite
transmitting
lines.
8.
Let's see, who else do I have? A couple more here. Al Pacino in Heat. Great classic.
And Scarface.
Transmitting 8 character. And Scarface, yep. Yaphet Kotto in Homicide. You mentioned Midnight Run. He's also in that, and probably a transmitting 8. But his character, Lieutenant Giardino in Giarella, Lieutenant Giarella, is a great transmitting 8 character. So.
The not flinching just jogged a memory of just a moment in The Dark Knight Rises when Batman and Bane are fighting, and Batman sends some explosifs at him, and they just pop around him like harmless firecrackers. And again, he does not flinch and just starts speechifying about theatrics, very very
would
effective
work on a lesser man,
on the uninitiated.
Yeah, on the uninitiated, right.
Same with Batman cutting out the lights and then hiding. He says, oh, you think the darkness is your friend. And again, just goes right into speechifying, even though that helps him be located all the more. But
a couple more. Go ahead.
Not afraid of the dark at all.
Right.
Not afraid, like, suddenly I'm vulnerable. He's going to attack me from the other direction, which is what happens. But, like, and I'll take it and still beat the shit out of you.
There's who was the character that said had the line now they will know why they fear the darkness. I'm trying to remember what movie that was from. It's going to haunt me, but anyway, I'll look that up and mention it next time. A couple more of my favorites. So we've mentioned The Godfather a couple of times. Obviously, Sonny and Sollozzo, and the guy that plays Sollozzo, Al Lettieri. He was only in a handful of movies, but always played a heavy transmitting 8 character. So he's the bad guy in one of my all-time favorite movies, Mr. Majestic, with Charles Bronson, where he just plays this, just badass hitman character, and also The Getaway with Steve McQueen and Ali McGraw. He plays a great heavy there. Frank Sinatra was probably a transmitting 8 character. Who else do I have here? There were a couple. Deadwood, Ian McShane's Al Swearingen, absolutely a transmitting 8, as well as Gerald McRaney's
Hearst.
Hearst.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men. Oh, and I've got to do a quick shout out to the great Bill Paxton in Edge of Tomorrow, where he plays is he a drill sergeant?
Drill sergeant, yeah.
Yeah, he's a drill sergeant. And there's the line there where he says he's from Science Hill, Kentucky, and the Tom Cruise character asks him, why do they call it Science Hill? And he says, don't know, don't care, right? And it's just like, and and something we haven't talked about here yet, and we're getting close to the end of time here, so we should I'll move this along. But we haven't talked about the pattern of expression. Okay, and one of the things that is important to understand with transmitters is that they can struggle to perceive the navigating stuff. Okay, and just that line, about Science Hill and why does it have its name? Don't know, don't care, is something you can hear a transmitting 8 say. Why on earth would I care about that? Now, a navigator wants to know the whole story. Oh, why Kentucky, Science Hill? What are you talking about, right? And you just see this in pretty much most of these transmitting 8 characters that we've talked about. They're strategic in the sense of having a goal and figuring out how to get to it, but often blinded to seeing the nuances and the impact of how they carry themselves and comport themselves. They can often end up thinking that they're a little slicker and more strategic than they actually are, and it can come back and haunt them. Now, of course, that's not always the case. Al Swearingen is a very strategic sort of thinker in a certain way, but most transmitting 8s, they take their eye off the bigger picture, and that's often their downfall, right?
In fact, I would assert that one of the major themes of Deadwood altogether is Al Swearingen's arc as a transmitting 8 to being that much more sensitive to navigating.
Yes.
In terms of, in the first season, he is the big boss in town, and everything's
Yes.
his way or the highway. And over the course of this series, he comes to understand the value of community, and helping others stave off a threat from this, industrialist called Hearst, Gerald McRaney. But like he starts to he's on the ground floor for the creation of what will become a functioning city rather than just a temporary boomtown and a gold rush town.
Yeah. All right, good. So, TJ, we've covered a lot of ground here. Any final thoughts?
One more transmitting 8.
Yeah.
Patton.
Yes.
George C. Scott, probably a transmitter in real life. Probably
And
played a transmitter in
probably-
Dr. Strangelove, one of my favorites.
Yes. And almost every role he's in, very much that character, kind of like John Wayne in that sense, the beginning scene of Patton, if you ever want to understand what is the transmitting bias all about, that opening scene says it all, right? I mean, it's just he's standing in front of the big flag, and the way that there will be these kind of the director has these big wide shots with him in front of the flag, and then narrows in on the handles of the ivory-handed pistols, and then pulls back out and then narrows in on some of the metals and that sort of thing, which kind of captures the broadcasting, narrowcasting thing we talk about with the transmitting bias that way. So, yeah, good example. All right. Well, so we've finished with the eights. We talked about the navigating eight with the character of Vito Corleone in Godfather 2. We talked about the preserving eight with the great episode from The Last of Us with Nick Offerman. And we just talked about Bane, Tom Hardy, and the movie Batman Rises. So next time, I'm not going to give away the movie we're going to watch, but we're going to talk about fives next time. So tune in, everybody. TJ, it's always fun.
Always a pleasure.
See you next time.
See you soon.